GoFast. This is the one everybody has seen. A Navy targeting camera locks onto something skimming low over the ocean off the East Coast in 2015. The crew sounds genuinely rattled, and the object appears to be tearing across the water faster than anything should. On the 27th of April 2020, the Pentagon released it officially, along with two others, posted through a Navy command's public reading room. The statement said the footage revealed no sensitive capabilities and would not interfere with any ongoing investigation. That is how 3 grainy clips stopped being rumors and became government documents, and GoFast became the proof. Then the Pentagon's own investigators took it apart. In a report dated the 6th of February 2025, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office worked out the geometry. The apparent speed comes from motion parallax, which is the effect that makes a nearby object look like it is racing when you are the one moving. Watch a bird pass close to a moving car and it seems to be flying impossibly fast, while a hawk half a mile out looks almost still. The camera was in a jet doing hundreds of miles an hour. Then they pulled the historical wind data for that time and that place. At 13,000 feet, the wind was blowing around 69 miles an hour, and the object's actual speed came out somewhere between 5 and 92 miles an hour. It was not outrunning anything, it was drifting with the wind, at roughly the speed of the air around it, and ARO assesses with high confidence that it never moved anomalously at all. The most famous impossible video is probably a balloon, and that is worth starting with, because the same office does not say that about everything. Green pyramids. In July 2019, sailors aboard the destroyer USS Russell filmed something through night vision that looked genuinely alien. Solid triangular shapes blinking, drifting above the ship information. When the footage leaked, the Pentagon did not deny it. Spokeswoman Sue Goff confirmed the images were taken by Navy personnel, which turned a grainy clip into an official artifact overnight. Remember that name as well. She is the same spokesperson whose statement put the 3 fighter videos into the public record. So what were they? The answer is in the equipment. The sailors were looking through night vision binoculars and filming the eyepiece with a separate camera, and out-of-focus points of light take the shape of the aperture they pass through. A triangular aperture turns every bright dot into a triangle. Photographers call it bokeh. And you have seen it yourself anytime distant streetlights turn into soft hexagons in a photo. The shape was in the eye, not in the sky. That analysis came from the skeptic Mick West rather than from the Navy, and it holds up. But it only explains the shape. Navy officials later said they were reasonably confident the objects correlated to unmanned aircraft operating in the area, which means the pyramids were drones. And the actual story is that nobody knows whose drones were circling an American warship. That question has never been answered. And 4 years later, the answer got even thinner. The Shootdowns. In February 2023, in the days right after a Chinese surveillance balloon crossed the country, American fighters shot down 3 more objects in 3 days. One off the coast of Alaska on the 10th, one over Canada's Yukon on the 11th, one over Lake Huron on the 12th, hit by a Sidewinder missile fired from an Air National Guard F-16 on the president's order. Officials said within days that these were probably benign, probably balloons, probably commercial or hobby hardware. And then the recoveries went quiet. Search teams were called off in bad weather and nothing was ever put in front of a camera. It is the hunter who fires 3 times and comes back with nothing to show anyone. Then in November 2024, more than a year and a half later, Canadian records surfaced. They showed that debris had in fact been pulled from Lake Huron within weeks of the shootdown, and that a module in it came from a company selling weather monitoring equipment. Even then, the mounted police would not confirm that the debris belonged to the object that was shot down. So the honest position is this. 3 objects were destroyed over North America with air-to-air missiles. The explanation offered was ordinary, and to this day, the owners and the purposes of those objects are not publicly known. Explained in words, thin on material. Now the cases where the argument never ended. Gimbal. Recorded in January 2015 during workups for the USS Theodore Roosevelt off the East Coast. Hold one thing in your head here. Gimbal and GoFast came off the same deployment and the same kind of aircraft, using the same targeting pod. The Pentagon put them online on the same afternoon in April 2020. One of them now has an official resolution and the other does not. That is not a story about which video is more convincing. It is a story about how much data survived, and this one behaves very differently under analysis. On the audio, you can hear the aircrew reacting in real time, and one of them says there is a whole fleet of them. On screen, a dark shape moves against the wind and then slowly rotates on its axis, which is the detail that made this video famous. Nothing built to fly rotates like that in level flight. The skeptic Mick West went at it with the camera's own design. The targeting pod sits on a multi-axis gimbal and derotates its image electronically to keep the horizon level, and a bright infrared source can throw an asymmetric glare that turns when the system turns. He also pointed out that the clouds in the background rotate in perfect step with the object, which is very hard to explain if the object is doing the turning. The pilots who were there have never accepted it. They argue that what they saw with their own eyes was not glare in a lens. 10 years on, both sides have made their case in public and neither has moved. It is one of two objects in that same footage release that the Pentagon has never resolved: the metallic spheres. In April 2023, the director of the Pentagon's UAP office showed Congress something it had never been shown before: footage from an MQ-9 Reaper drone over the Middle East of a silver sphere passing beneath it. No wings, and no visible propulsion, and no exhaust plume. Just a ball moving through the air. 2 months later, at a NASA briefing, Sean Kirkpatrick said something that mattered more than the clip. He said these are real objects, that they are seen all over the world, and that they make what he called very interesting apparent maneuvers. There is an older one, too. A 4-second clip filmed by a reconnaissance aircraft over Mosul in Iraq in April 2016, released to the public in 2023, showing the same kind of sphere crossing above the city. 4 seconds is the entire record. There is no approach, and no departure, and no second angle, because the aircraft was there to do a different job and the object simply passed through the frame. This is the animal that everyone in the village has seen and nobody has photographed properly. Kirkpatrick's own position was that they need better resolved data before anyone can say what they are, and the skeptics have taken their swing here as well. In October 2023, the investigative outfit Bellingcat published an analysis arguing that the Reaper sphere behaves like a balloon. The office has not closed the case either way. Officially, these are unresolved. So is the one that started all of it: Tic Tac, the 14th of November 2004 off the coast of Southern California. For days, the radar operators on the cruiser USS Princeton have been tracking objects they cannot account for, and they run a full diagnostic restart on their systems to rule out phantom tracks. The operators describe contacts dropping from around 80,000 feet to sea level almost instantly. That is testimony from the people at the screens rather than a published measurement, and the distinction matters. 2 Super Hornets are sent to look. Commander David Fravor is flying the lead aircraft, and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich is on his wing. Beneath them, the ocean is churning white over something they cannot see, and above that patch is a smooth white object roughly the size of a fighter, with no wings, and no rotor, and no exhaust. Fravor turns to close on it. The object turns to mirror him, then accelerates out of sight. And here is the part that has never had an answer. Minutes later, it is picked up again at the crew's cap point, a prearranged rendezvous position about 60 miles away that existed only in their briefing. Something got to the waterhole before they did. A second aircraft got the object on its targeting cameras shortly afterwards, and that clip is the third of the 3 the Pentagon put out in April 2020. It remains unexplained today. Remember Fravor's name. He comes back later in a room with a microphone in front of him. And there are 2 more cases coming that were classified until 11 days ago. The Gulf of Oman. On the 8th of September 2021, an American AC-130J gunship is running a live fire exercise over the Gulf of Oman, with Special Operations Forces aboard. According to the incident report, the crew observe approximately 25 separate instances of unidentified objects. The report describes them as cold orbs flying at low altitude. It records them moving between 250 and 1,300 miles an hour, holding formations and maneuvering aggressively. Then comes the line that is difficult to read past. The report states that the objects appeared to react to the aircraft firing its main cannon. Each orb is estimated at about 4 feet across. At one point, a crew member turns the infrared cameras onto a flare the aircraft has dropped, and finds 2 of the cold orbs hovering roughly 20 feet above it. Moths at a porch light. The Pentagon released 6 videos of this encounter on the 7th of August 2026, and it is honest to say what they actually are. They are cell phone videos of the gunship's own screens, filmed by the crew. The official status is unresolved. And hold on to that release date, because everything in the last part of this video comes from it. Bagram. Same release, different decade. In 2002, a pilot is at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan at around 4:30 in the morning. In the account recorded on an FBI interview form and published in 2026, he says the stars overhead go out. Not dim, out. Something is passing between him and the sky, and as it moves, he makes out the shape. An equilateral triangle roughly 500 feet on a side, with no lights anywhere on it. It crosses from west to east in complete silence at what he estimates as 150 knots. It is the sensation of something large going over you in a dark forest, where you never see the animal and you only know it passed because the light changed. Bagram, in 2002, was one of the most heavily defended airfields on the planet, at the center of an active war, with radar and air defense and thousands of people on it. His account is now an official government record sitting in a public archive alongside a drawing made from his description. It is also worth saying plainly that there is nothing else in that release which independently confirms it or identifies what he saw. One man, and one form and one night in 2002. The status is unresolved, and it took 24 years to reach the public. Which brings us to the day the pilots stopped being anonymous. The hearing. The 26th of July, 2023, a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee and David Fravor is back. 19 years after the Tic Tac, he is sitting at a witness table under oath describing it to Congress. But the man the cameras came for is a former intelligence officer named David Grush. Under oath, Grush tells the committee that he has interviewed more than 40 officials with direct knowledge. He says the United States has run a multi-decade program to recover and reverse engineer craft of non-human origin hidden from congressional oversight. He uses the phrase, non-human biologics. He also tells the committee that he cannot name the first-hand witnesses in public and says he has given those names to the intelligence committees and to the Inspector General. Grush made claims under oath. He did not bring material. The Pentagon's UAP office responded that the central source of the allegations had refused to speak with them and that they had seen no credible proof of any reverse engineering program. Writing in a science magazine some months afterwards, the office's director described the years he had spent chasing these allegations as a whirlwind of tall tales and fabrication and third-hand retellings. He added that not one of the whistleblowers in the public eye had chosen to come to his office and hand over what they had. So the status is exactly this, and no more than this. An unconfirmed claim, made under oath, that the investigating office says it cannot substantiate. The tally. In November 2024, the same office published its annual report, and this is where the whole subject gets its actual shape. Over roughly 13 months, it received 757 new reports. It closed 118 of them during that period and finalized another 174, and every single one of those resolved to something ordinary. Balloons, drones, satellites, aircraft, birds. The most common answer to a report of something impossible in the sky is a bird, and the office states plainly that it has found no evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology. But read the next part carefully because both camps skip it. The majority of the office's total case holdings remain unresolved, and the reason given is not mystery. It is a lack of data. Most unexplained cases are unexplained because nobody got a good enough look. A blurry sensor return from a jet doing 400 knots is not evidence of anything. And it is also not nothing. It just sits there. That is a far less satisfying answer than either a cover-up or a debunking. And it happens to be the one the documents support. It is also the same answer Blue Book reached in 1969, which we are about to get to, which raises the obvious question, if the government keeps saying there is nothing here, why is it now publishing the files? The archive. For most of living memory, the official American position was that there was nothing to discuss. Project Blue Book, the Air Force's long-running study, was shut down on the 17th of December, 1969. Its conclusion was that nothing it had investigated threatened national security, showed technology beyond human knowledge, or was extraterrestrial. But look at the arithmetic underneath that conclusion. Blue Book took in 12,618 reports across 17 years, and it closed with 700 and one of them still listed as unidentified. The study that ended the subject left 701 open cases on the table and walked away. That was the answer for half a century. Then, in February 2026, the president directed federal agencies to identify and release their records on the subject. The result is a system with a bureaucratic name, the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, and a public website. The first batch went up on the 8th of May 2026, and it contained more than 160 files. 3 more batches followed between that day and the 10th of July. It is a trail camera that was pointed at the woods for 50 years while the agency insisted there was nothing walking past it. And then the agency published the memory card. And 11 days ago, it published another one, the 5th batch. On the 7th of August 2026, the Pentagon added 41 more records to that archive. They span from 1950 to 2026. They come from the Pentagon itself and the FBI and the CIA, along with the State Department and the Executive Office of the President. Note what that list means. This is not one service opening its own cupboard. It is 5 separate arms of the government putting material into the same public folder. They are not all video either. There are documents and sensor clips and FBI interview forms, plus artist renderings drawn from what witnesses described. You have already seen 2 of them. The gunship over the Gulf of Oman and the triangle over Bagram both came out of this batch 11 days ago, after 5 years and 24 years of sitting in a file. The rest includes infrared footage of a hovering black sphere, enhanced imagery of objects over rough terrain, and a clip from 2025 of an orb crossing a populated city in the Middle East. Some of the records in this release are still partly classified, and the department has said the releases continue on a rolling basis, which means the archive is not finished. So here's where the honest count leaves you. Most of it is balloons and drones and birds and glare in a lens, and the office set up to investigate says it has found no evidence of anything from anywhere else, and a real remainder sits there unresolved. Not because it is beyond explanation, but because the data was never good enough to close it. The archive is now growing faster than the explanations are. 25 cold orbs hovering over a live fire exercise in the Gulf of Oman. A silent triangle blotting the stars out over Bagram. A Tic Tac that reached a rendezvous point it should not have known about. If you made it to the end, comment 41 so I know you counted the files with me. And the address is not a secret, it is war.gov/UFO, and you can read every one of these yourself. Now, all of that is about objects nobody can identify a few thousand feet above the ground. There are worlds out there that nobody can explain either, drifting between the stars with no sun at all, and we have seen some of them for less than an hour. The most disturbing rogue planets ever found. It is on your screen. I will see you there.